Evelyn Sterling sat at the head of the polished oak dining table, her manicured fingers wrapped around the stem of a wineglass. The opulent chandelier above cast shimmering reflections on the crystal, mirroring the image of her life, flawless, brilliant, and enviable. As the CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech giant revered for its groundbreaking advancements, Evelyn had earned her reputation as an indomitable force in the industry. She had a sharp mind, an iron will, and an empire built on precision and intellect. But tonight, surrounded by her closest allies and loved ones at an exclusive anniversary dinner, Evelyn felt the faintest tremor of unease. The event was meant to be a celebration 10 years since the launch of her company. Her husband, Daniel, a charming and supportive presence by her side for 12 years, had taken the reins in organizing the evening. The venue, a lavish private room at one of the city's most elite restaurants, was impeccable. Colleagues and family mingled effortlessly, toasting her brilliance and recounting anecdotes of her journey. Yet, beneath the surface of joviality, Evelyn detected something off, a whisper of discord, like a misaligned note in a symphony. It began with a glance. Midway through the evening, as Daniel laughed at a joke told by her brother-in-law, she caught his gaze flickering to the other end of the table. Following his line of sight, she saw Vanessa, her executive assistant, leaning in close to one of her senior directors, Mark. Their interaction was subdued, the kind of quiet conversation that might go unnoticed by anyone not attuned to subtle cues. But Evelyn's eyes lingered. Vanessa's expression was animated, her hand brushing against Mark's arm as she spoke. Vanessa had been Evelyn's right hand for years, a reliable gatekeeper who managed her chaotic schedule and kept the wheels of Sterling Innovations turning smoothly. Evelyn dismissed the thought, attributing her unease to overthinking. Yet as the evening progressed, her instincts sharpened. Daniel seemed unusually distracted, his smiles too quick, his glances furtive. Even Vanessa, typically composed and efficient, appeared out of sync, laughing too loudly at some remarks while avoiding Evelyn's gaze. After dinner, as the party moved into a lounge area for drinks, Evelyn decided to shake the feeling with a brisk conversation. She approached Vanessa, who stood by the bar. "Enjoying yourself?" Evelyn asked, her tone light but probing. Vanessa turned, her smile quick and nervous. "Oh, absolutely. It's a wonderful celebration, Evelyn. You deserve every bit of it." "Thank you," Evelyn said, tilting her head slightly. "I saw you chatting with Mark earlier. Something work?" Vanessa's eyes darted to the side before she answered. "Just catching up. He mentioned an upcoming project, that's all." Evelyn nodded, filing away the hesitation in Vanessa's response. She made her way to Daniel next, who was engrossed in a conversation with Mark. When she approached, Mark excused himself, leaving her alone with her husband. "You've outdone yourself tonight," Evelyn said, slipping her arm through his. "The evening's perfect." Daniel smiled down at her, but the warmth in his expression felt practiced. "I just wanted to make it special for you. You've worked so hard for this. And yet you've been so distant," she murmured, her voice low enough for only him to hear. Daniel stiffened, his hand tightening slightly on hers. "Distant? I've been right here all night." Evelyn didn't press further. Years of negotiation and boardroom battles had taught her to pick her moments. Tonight wasn't the time for confrontation, but the seed of doubt was firmly planted. As the night wore on, Evelyn's analytical mind churned. She observed every interaction, every stolen glance. Pieces of a puzzle began to surface, though the full picture eluded her. Daniel and Vanessa exchanged a brief but meaningful look as the evening came to a close, and Mark seemed too intent on avoiding her eyes. By the time Evelyn and Daniel returned home, the lingering unease had transformed into a quiet resolve. She knew better than to ignore her instincts. Her life's success had been built on recognizing patterns others overlooked and anticipating moves before they were made. If something was amiss in her world, she would find it, and she would act. As Daniel kissed her goodnight and slipped into their bedroom, Evelyn stood in the dimly lit hallway, her mind racing. The life she had meticulously crafted felt suddenly precarious, as if a crack had formed in its perfect foundation. She wasn't sure yet where it led, but she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The first act of betrayal might have been subtle, but Evelyn Sterling was anything but naive, and if someone thought they could outmaneuver her, they were about to learn that she played the game better than anyone. Evelyn woke early the next morning, her mind still tangled in the events of the previous night. She sipped her coffee in the quiet of her kitchen, watching the sunlight creep across the marble countertops. Her husband, Daniel, was still asleep upstairs, his easy demeanor from the party an odd contrast to the unease he left her with. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that the dinner wasn't just a celebration, it was a performance, and she hadn't been in on the script. The first thing Evelyn did was log onto her work laptop. If there were cracks in her personal life, perhaps they stretched into her professional one too. Her assistant Vanessa handled a significant portion of her communications and schedule. Evelyn trusted her implicitly, at least she thought she had. But trust was a fragile thing, and last night had given her reason to test it. She started small, pulling up the calendar Vanessa managed. Every entry was in order, from the board meetings to the lunches with investors, but something nagged at her. The small, recurring block on Vanessa's schedule marked personal errand. Evelyn had never questioned it before, but now the benign label felt like a smokescreen. Her investigative streak kicked in, and she cross-referenced the blocks with her own meetings. She noticed a pattern. Vanessa's personal errands often coincided with times Evelyn was tied up in critical, high-stakes discussions. Her assistant was always efficient, always on time, but now it seemed too convenient. By mid-morning, Evelyn couldn't sit idle any longer. She needed information, and she needed it quietly. She placed a call to Michael, her company's head of IT. "Michael, I need a discreet favor," she said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. "I want a report on email and calendar activity between Vanessa and Mark over the last 6 months. Can you get that for me?" Michael hesitated briefly but agreed. Evelyn didn't explain herself, she didn't need to. She had built her company on loyalty, and Michael was among the few she trusted without question. While waiting for the report, Evelyn decided to test another lead. Last night, Daniel's behavior hadn't just been distracted, it had been evasive. The casual glances, the overcompensating smiles, it all felt rehearsed. Evelyn reached for his phone, left charging on the kitchen counter. She hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the line she was about to cross. This wasn't paranoia, it was strategy. The phone was locked, but Daniel's predictable nature worked in her favor. After 2 attempts, his birth year and their wedding date, it unlocked. She scrolled through his messages, finding nothing unusual in his recent conversations, but when she opened his email, a wave of unease surged through her. Buried among promotional offers and work correspondence was an exchange with Mark. The subject line read, "Progress." Her heart quickened as she opened the thread. "The last meeting went well. She didn't suspect a thing. We're still on track." "Good. Let's keep it that way. Timing is everything. Let me know if there are any hiccups." Evelyn stared at the words, her stomach churning. It wasn't explicit, but it didn't have to be. Mark and Daniel were colluding, and whatever their plan was, it involved deceiving her. She closed the email and set the phone back in its place, careful to leave no trace. The betrayal wasn't yet clear in its scope, but the pieces were beginning to fall into place. Her husband and her senior director were working together, and it wasn't for the company's benefit or hers. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of calculation and subtle inquiries. Evelyn kept her demeanor calm and composed, even when Vanessa arrived at the office with her usual cheery efficiency. The assistant handed Evelyn her itinerary for the day, chatting casually about upcoming meetings. Evelyn nodded, smiling faintly, but her sharp eyes observed every movement. Vanessa's usual confidence now seemed like arrogance, her smooth words like a mask. By midday, Michael sent her the report she had requested. Evelyn closed her office door before opening the file. Her stomach tightened as she scanned the contents. Vanessa and Mark had exchanged dozens of emails, many of them encrypted. The ones that weren't encrypted, however, were damning enough. "She's in the dark. I'll keep the schedule clear for your next meeting." Perfect. "We'll discuss the next steps then. This needs to stay airtight." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Vanessa and Mark weren't just having casual conversations, they were orchestrating something, and Vanessa was actively ensuring Evelyn remained oblivious. The trust she had placed in her assistant now felt like a liability, a blind spot that had been exploited. She pressed her fingers to her temples, breathing deeply to steady herself. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. Vanessa wasn't just an employee, she had been a confidant, privy to Evelyn's most guarded plans. And Mark wasn't just a colleague, he had been handpicked by Evelyn for his innovative mind. Now they were both conspiring against her, with Daniel's involvement deepening the wound. Evelyn's thoughts churned with possibilities. Were they sabotaging a deal, leaking confidential information? Or was it something even more sinister, an attempt to push her out of her own company? She couldn't afford to act rashly, not without understanding the full scope of the betrayal. The afternoon brought an unexpected opportunity. Vanessa was away from her desk, likely on one of her personal errands, and Evelyn seized the moment. She accessed Vanessa's computer, navigating through folders with practiced efficiency. Most files were routine, meeting notes, expense reports, but a hidden folder caught her eye. It was password protected, but Evelyn wasn't deterred. Years of running a tech empire had taught her a thing or two about bypassing digital barriers. Inside the folder, she found a series of documents that made her blood run cold. Contracts, memos, and financial projections, all tied to a secret venture led by Mark and Daniel. The documents detailed a plan to launch a rival company using Sterling Innovations' proprietary technology. Vanessa's role was clear. She had been feeding them insider information, ensuring their scheme remained hidden from Evelyn. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. These weren't just disloyal employees, they were thieves, and Daniel, the man who had vowed to stand by her side, was the mastermind. Evelyn's first instinct was to confront them, to unleash her fury and demand answers. But she knew better. Acting impulsively would only tip them off, giving them time to cover their tracks. Instead, she decided to bide her time, gathering every piece of evidence she could. As the day ended, Evelyn returned home, her mind a storm of anger, heartbreak, and determination. Daniel greeted her with a kiss, his touch now feeling like poison. She played the part of the unsuspecting wife, nodding along to his casual chatter while mentally mapping out her next move. The evening passed in a haze of feigned normalcy. Evelyn's mind replayed every interaction, every conversation from the past few months, searching for clues she might have missed. The betrayal wasn't just a blow to her trust. It was a challenge to her authority, her very identity. And Evelyn Sterling didn't take challenges lightly. Before she went to bed, she sat in her study. staring at the document she had copied from Vanessa's computer. The people closest to her had built a house of cards, thinking she wouldn't notice the cracks, but they had underestimated her. Evelyn didn't just build empires, she protected them with relentless precision. They thought they had played her. But Evelyn wasn't a victim, she was a strategist, and she was about to prove that even the most intricate webs of deceit could be unraveled, strand by strand. The next morning, Evelyn Sterling woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The betrayal had cut deeply, but she would not let it paralyze her. Instead, it fueled her. The fragments of the conspiracy swirling around her, Daniel, Vanessa, Mark, and their secret venture, needed to be pieced together into a coherent whole. Evelyn wasn't one to strike blindly. She needed clarity and ammunition before she made her move. Her first step was to expand her intelligence network. Evelyn had built her career on understanding human behavior and leveraging relationships, and now was the time to put those skills to work. She reached out to her longtime confidant, Serena Mathis, a private investigator with a knack for uncovering truths others wished to keep hidden. When Evelyn explained the situation over a secure phone call, Serena's voice was calm but firm. "Give me a week and I'll have everything you need," she said. "But Evelyn, you need to keep playing along. Don't let them suspect you're on to them." Evelyn agreed, though the idea of pretending to be oblivious gnawed at her. She wasn't one for duplicity in her personal life, but this time it was necessary. To outmaneuver her enemies, she had to think like them. Evelyn began her investigation at home. Daniel's routine had always been predictable: early morning jogs, meetings with his financial clients, occasional charity events in the evening. But now, Evelyn scrutinized every detail, looking for deviations. She noticed small changes that might have gone unnoticed before. He was spending more time on his phone, often stepping into another room to take calls. He claimed they were work, but Evelyn had seen enough in his email to know better. His explanations grew vaguer, his movements more calculated. One evening, while Danielle was in the shower, Evelyn seized the opportunity to check his briefcase. She found nothing incriminating at first glance, just documents related to his financial advising work. But tucked into a folder labeled Personal, she found a business plan titled New Horizons, Strategy for Tech Innovation. Evelyn's blood ran cold as she skimmed the document. It outlined a roadmap for a tech company strikingly similar to Sterling Innovations, complete with projections, marketing strategies, and an emphasis on disrupting legacy systems. The language was damning. It was clear this wasn't just an abstract idea. It was a full-fledged plan to dismantle her empire and replace it with a rival built on her foundation. She took photos of the documents with her phone and carefully returned everything to its place. Daniel's betrayal was no longer a suspicion, it was a fact. Vanessa was equally meticulous in hiding her tracks, but Evelyn knew her assistant's strengths and weaknesses. Vanessa's efficiency and organization had always been her greatest assets, but they were also her Achilles heel. She thrived on routine and rarely deviated from her habits. Evelyn exploited this predictability by keeping a close eye on her assistant's movements. One afternoon, Evelyn noticed Vanessa slipping away during a lunch break. Instead of heading to the office cafeteria, Vanessa left the building entirely, hailing a cab. Evelyn followed at a discreet distance, her heart pounding with adrenaline. The cab led to an upscale cafe in a quieter part of the city. Vanessa entered, and Evelyn parked nearby, watching from her car. A few minutes later, Mark arrived. They greeted each other warmly, their body language relaxed but intimate. Evelyn couldn't hear their conversation, but their animated expressions and occasional furtive glances told her everything she needed to know. They were strategizing, plotting in plain sight. After an hour, the two left separately, but Evelyn stayed behind. She entered the cafe, her sharp eyes scanning the area. On the table where Vanessa and Mark had been sitting, she noticed a crumpled napkin. Picking it up, she saw a hastily scrawled note. Meeting with D on Thursday. Secure location. Don't forget the docks. Evelyn's lips tightened into a grim smile. The net was tightening. With evidence piling up, Evelyn began to formulate her response. She couldn't simply expose the betrayal. She needed to dismantle their scheme and ensure they could never recover. For this, she needed allies. Her first call was to James Carter, her company's in-house legal counsel. James had been with her since the early days of Sterling Innovations and was one of the few people Evelyn trusted completely. She brought him into the loop, sharing the documents, emails, and observations she had gathered. "James," Evelyn said, her tone steely, "I want airtight legal action. I want every asset they've used to build this scheme frozen. I want them stripped of their positions, their finances, everything." James nodded. "We can do that, but we'll need to gather even more concrete evidence to ensure the case is bulletproof." Evelyn agreed. She had no intention of moving prematurely. Her next move was to contact Michael, the head of IT, once again. This time, she requested a full audit of company communications, focusing on encrypted messages and unauthorized access to proprietary files. Michael's findings revealed that Vanessa had been downloading sensitive documents late at night, well outside her normal work hours. With every new piece of evidence, Evelyn's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for her company, she was fighting for her integrity, her legacy. The people she had trusted most had tried to undermine her, but they had underestimated her capacity for resilience and strategy. Evelyn's investigation reached its apex a few days later when Serena, her private investigator, delivered a bombshell revelation. Daniel wasn't just colluding with Mark and Vanessa. He was the financial backer of their entire operation. Using accounts Evelyn didn't even know existed, Daniel had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into the rival venture, securing patents and setting up offshore accounts to shield their activities. But the most shocking discovery came in the form of a video. Serena had managed to intercept security footage from a hotel Daniel frequently visited, claiming it was for client meetings. The footage showed him entering a suite with Vanessa late at night, their interactions far from professional. Evelyn watched the video in stunned silence, her emotions a volatile mix of heartbreak, fury, and determination. The betrayal was deeper than she had imagined, intertwining her personal and professional life in a web of deceit so intricate it felt suffocating. Evelyn decided it was time to act. With James, Michael, and Serena by her side, she prepared to confront the trio. But she wouldn't do it behind closed doors. She wanted them to feel the weight of their actions in the same way she had, publicly and irrevocably. Evelyn planned a board meeting for the following week, inviting key stakeholders and senior executives. On the surface, it was framed as a routine update on the company's progress, but Evelyn had other plans. She would expose Daniel, Vanessa, and Mark in front of everyone who mattered, dismantling their scheme in the most decisive way possible. As the day of the meeting approached, Evelyn's resolve only grew stronger. She had spent her life building Sterling Innovations, and no one, not even those closest to her, would take it from her. The conspirators thought they had her cornered, but they were about to learn that Evelyn Sterling didn't just survive betrayal, she thrived on overcoming it. The day of the board meeting arrived with an air of quiet tension that Evelyn Sterling had orchestrated to perfection. She sat at the head of the gleaming conference table, the same seat she'd occupied for over a decade, commanding attention with her presence alone. Around her, the key players of Sterling Innovations assembled, their faces a mix of curiosity and formality. They had no idea the storm that was about to break over their heads. Evelyn had chosen this setting deliberately. The boardroom symbolized the empire she had built, the achievements she had fought for, and the control she refused to relinquish. This was where deals were struck, alliances forged, and power consolidated. Today, it would be the stage for a reckoning. Daniel arrived shortly before the meeting began, wearing his usual mask of easy charm. He greeted the board members with warm handshakes and exchanged pleasantries, slipping into the role of the supportive husband without missing a beat. Evelyn watched him from across the room, her expression unreadable. He hadn't the faintest idea what awaited him. Vanessa and Mark entered next, both appearing confident, almost smug. Vanessa took her usual seat near Evelyn, offering her boss a polite smile. Mark, seated farther down the table, avoided her gaze entirely. Evelyn found their audacity almost laughable. They believed they were safe, their treachery buried beneath layers of deception. They had no idea she had dismantled their lies piece by piece. Once everyone was seated, Evelyn began the meeting as she always did, reviewing the agenda with poise and professionalism. The room buzzed with the usual discussions of quarterly earnings and strategic initiatives, but Evelyn's focus remained razor-sharp. She waited for the right moment, letting the tension simmer just beneath the surface. Midway through the meeting, she struck. "Before we move on to the next item," Evelyn said, her voice calm but commanding, "I'd like to address a matter of great importance to the future of Sterling Innovations." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his confident facade faltering for the first time. Vanessa's pen froze mid-note, and Mark's expression tightened. They sensed the shift in tone, the undercurrent of something far more serious than routine business. Evelyn stood, walking to the head of the table with deliberate grace. "Over the past few weeks, I've come across troubling information regarding certain individuals within this organization and their involvement in activities that threaten the integrity of our company." A murmur rippled through the room, confusion and curiosity mingling in the air. Evelyn let it linger for a moment before continuing, her gaze sweeping across the faces of those gathered. "It has come to my attention," she said, her voice growing colder, "that there has been a deliberate effort to undermine this company, a conspiracy involving stolen intellectual property, financial embezzlement, and plans to launch a rival enterprise built on the foundation of Sterling Innovations." Gasps filled the room, and Daniel's face drained of color. Vanessa's composed demeanor shattered, her wide eyes darting to Evelyn, then to Mark. Mark clenched his fists on the table, his carefully crafted veneer of confidence crumbling under the weight of her words. Evelyn turned to the large screen on the wall, pressing a button on the remote. A series of documents appeared, projected for everyone to see. The stolen files Vanessa had downloaded, the rival company's business plan signed by Daniel, and financial transactions linking all three conspirators. Each slide was more damning than the last. "I have gathered irrefutable evidence of this betrayal," Evelyn said, her voice laced with fury. "And let me make one thing clear. I will not tolerate treachery in my company, in my family, or in my life." The room was stunned into silence. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but Evelyn cut him off with a single look that could have frozen fire. "Not another word, Daniel. You've said enough through your actions." Vanessa looked ready to bolt, but the doors were guarded by security personnel Evelyn had discreetly stationed outside. Mark, pale and sweating, looked like a man cornered by a predator. "Vanessa," Evelyn said, her tone sharp as a blade. "You were more than an assistant to me. I trusted you with everything, and this is how you repay me? By conspiring against me with my own husband?" Vanessa stammered. "Evelyn, I can explain." "Don't," Eveline snapped. "You've already proven how well you lie. I'm not interested in your excuses." She turned to Mark next. "And you? I brought you into this company because I believed in your potential. I gave you opportunities others could only dream of, and you used them to stab me in the back." Mark's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. There was no defense against the mountain of evidence Evelyn had compiled. Finally, and faced Daniel, the man who had stood beside her through triumphs and challenges, who had vowed to be her partner in life and love. Her voice softened, but only slightly. "Daniel, I love you. I've built a life with you, and you betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable, not just as a husband, but as someone who conspired to destroy everything I've worked for." Daniel's face contorted with shame and desperation. "Evelyn, please." "Stop," she said, her voice cutting through his plea. "You don't get to beg for forgiveness. Not here, not now." The room watched in stunned silence as Evelyn turned back to the board. Effective immediately, Vanessa is terminated from her position, and Mark's contract is nullified. Security will escort them out of the building. As for Daniel, she paused, her eyes locking with his. "You will be hearing from my lawyers. Consider this marriage, and every benefit you've gained from it, over." Daniel looked shattered, but Evelyn didn't waver. She had already mourned the loss of the man she thought he was. Now she was reclaiming her power. As Vanessa and Mark were let out by security, Evelyn addressed the board one final time. "Let this serve as a reminder to all of you. Loyalty and integrity are non-negotiable in this company. Sterling Innovations will not fall because of greed or betrayal. It will thrive because we are stronger than any individual's attempt to bring us down." The meeting ended in solemn agreement, the weight of Evelyn's words hanging heavy in the room. As the board members filed out, Evelyn remained seated, staring at the empty chair where Daniel had sat moments before. Oh! She felt the first wave of exhaustion wash over her. The confrontation had been brutal, but it was necessary. She had protected her legacy, defended her name, and exposed those who sought to destroy her. Yet as she sat alone in the silence of the boardroom, Evelyn couldn't ignore the ache of betrayal that lingered. This wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of a new one where Evelyn Sterling would rebuild, stronger and wiser than before, one where she would no longer allow herself to be blindsided by those she trusted most. But deep down, she couldn't help but wonder, had she truly uncovered every layer of the conspiracy? Or were there still shadows lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike? In the days following the dramatic board meeting, Evelyn Sterling returned to her office, the very heart of Sterling Innovations, determined to reclaim her life and legacy. The corridors, once buzzing with whispers of admiration, now hummed with an air of reverent silence. Her actions had sent shockwaves through the company, an unmistakable message that Evelyn Sterling was not to be underestimated. Yet beneath her composed exterior, Evelyn felt the weight of what she had endured. Trust, once so freely given, was now a fragile concept. The betrayal by Daniel, Vanessa, and Mark had scarred her, but it had also forged something stronger, an unyielding resolve to protect what she had built. As she settled into her chair, Evelyn glanced at the sleek metal nameplate on her desk. It bore her name, a simple yet powerful reminder of the empire she had created. This office had seen every step of her journey, from sleepless nights spent chasing innovation to triumphant celebrations of success. Now, it would serve as the starting point for her next chapter. Vanessa and Mark's abrupt departure had sent ripples through the company. Gossip swirled in hushed tones, employees speculating about the true extent of their betrayal. Evelyn didn't indulge the rumors. Instead, she focused on the cleanup, systematically unraveling the damage they had done. The investigation had revealed more than just their betrayal. It had exposed weaknesses in her company's infrastructure. Evelyn attacked these vulnerabilities with the same precision that had built her success. New protocols were implemented, and key positions were filled with individuals whose loyalty she trusted implicitly. One afternoon, she sat down with Michael, her head of IT, to discuss the changes. "This isn't just about preventing another betrayal," Evelyn said. "It's about creating a culture where integrity is the foundation of everything we do." Michael nodded. "Understood, Evelyn. We'll make it happen." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. "Good. I want no cracks in this fortress. None." At home, the silence was deafening. Daniel had moved out following the board meeting, leaving behind only the hollow shell of the life they had shared. Evelyn walked through the rooms of their once vibrant home, now stripped of the warmth and laughter that had filled it. She had always prided herself on her strength, but in these quiet moments, the pain crept in. She found herself standing in their bedroom one evening, staring at a framed photo on the dresser. It was taken years ago, during a vacation in the mountains. Daniel's arm was draped around her shoulders, his smile wide and genuine. She had loved that smile, trusted it. Now, it felt like a cruel reminder of how blind she had been. Evelyn picked up the photo, her fingers trembling. For a moment she considered smashing it, letting her anger shatter the glass, but instead she placed it face down in a drawer. Anger wouldn't heal her, only time and action would. She turned her attention to her legal team, ensuring that every financial tie Daniel had to her or her company was severed. The divorce proceedings were swift and clinical, leaving no room for sentimentality. Evelyn wanted a clean break, free from the shadow of his betrayal. One unexpected outcome of the ordeal was the emergence of an ally in Serena, the private investigator who had uncovered the depths of Daniel's treachery. Serena's tenacity and insight had impressed Evelyn, and their professional relationship began to evolve into something deeper, a quiet camaraderie built on mutual respect. Over coffee one afternoon, Serena asked, "What's next for you, Evelyn? You've taken back control, but where do you go from here?" Evelyn sipped her drink thoughtfully. "Forward," she said simply. "Always forward. This company is my life's work, and I won't let anyone tarnish it. But I've also learned something valuable. Never let your guard down, even with those closest to you." Serena nodded. "It's a hard lesson, but one that'll serve you well." Meanwhile, the rival company Daniel and Mark had tried to build was falling apart. Evelyn had ensured that their stolen intellectual property was secured and their patents invalidated. With her legal team's precision and Serena's investigative prowess, the venture collapsed before it could even launch. Daniel, Vanessa, and Mark faced not only financial ruin but also public disgrace. Evelyn's name, once tied to theirs, now stood alone, untainted. She had turned their betrayal into a powerful narrative of resilience, and the press ate it up. Headlines praised her for her strength and foresight, cementing her reputation as a leader who could weather any storm. One evening, Evelyn stood in her office, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city skyline. The world outside seemed vast and unyielding, but she no longer felt daunted. The events of the past weeks had tested her in ways she hadn't imagined, but she had emerged stronger, more determined than ever. She thought about the people who had tried to bring her down. They had underestimated her, seen her as a target rather than the strategist she was. But Evelyn had turned their betrayal into an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, to strengthen not just her company, but herself. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Serena. "The storm's past, Evelyn. Now it's your time to shine." Evelyn smiled faintly and typed a reply. It always was. As she turned off the lights and left her office, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose. Betrayal had scarred her, but it hadn't broken her. She had risen from the ashes of deceit, and now the future was hers to shape. Because Evelyn Sterling wasn't just a survivor, she was a force to be reckoned with.